Today we're going to continue our study of nouns. Again, in the book, we are on page 295, and you can see that nouns can be broken up into different categories. There are different types of nouns. Some of these you may be familiar with, while some of them they may be completely new to you. That's why we're going over it. So on page 295, we're going to get started with the difference between concrete and abstract nouns. So you can see in the text that a concrete noun names something that you can use your five senses to realize that it's there. It's something that you can see, touch, taste, hear, or smell. While an abstract noun is something that you know it's there, but you can't use one of your five senses to realize it. So the text gives you some examples of those types of nouns, concrete nouns: a person, cannon, a road, a city, or music. Those are all things that you can see or hear or touch. While the abstract nouns, they fall into that idea category or to that emotion or feeling category, qualities. And here you see listed, you see hope, improvement, independence, desperation, or cooperation. So you can see that concrete nouns, you have to remember, concrete nouns are there. You can use one of your five senses to know it's there. But abstract nouns, you have to use your mind to know they're there. You can't use one of your five senses. And that's the biggest difference between concrete and abstract nouns. Now, going into the next two categories, category, you were going to be looking at something I believe is new to you, and that's called the collective noun. And it says a collective noun names a group of people or things. We have special groups for we have special names for certain groups of people or things. One thing that we're most familiar with in high school is a team. A team is a collective noun that means all of the players on one certain kind of athletics. You could even think of a band, or as they have listed in the text, a choir. They're all made up of separate parts, but they all work to do the same thing. So you can see up here in the definition, it names a group of people or things. It looks like it's singular, but it may be singular or plural, depending on how it's used in a sentence. You see the examples here. An army, a cast, like a cast of actors. A choir, it's composed of singers. A class, composed of students. A troop of soldiers. A crew of people, maybe that's a crew of cooks, or it's a crew of backstage technicians. You see a faculty, that applies to a group of teachers, or legislature, that applies to our congressmen and our representatives. So you see, if it's a special word that's talking specifically about a group of someone or something that's alike, that's called a collective noun. Now you see below that red box it says, do not confuse collective nouns with plural nouns. They're not the same thing. Let's take, for example, a dog. You can have one dog. You can have two dogs. But if you have a whole big group of dogs, they would be called what? They'd be called a pack. You have a pack of dogs. So collective nouns, you can think of animal groups, a herd of cattle, or a group of crows has that funny name called a murder. Well, a murder of crows, murder is a collective noun at that specific point in time. But you can have one murder of crows, and so murder would be singular. You have one group of crows, but it's made up of many crows, but it's still considered a singular noun. Now next is something you're going to be very familiar with. It has to do with compound words. And that's what we're going to talk about here is compound nouns. You see the definition. Compound noun is a noun made up of two or more words acting as a single unit. Compound nouns can be written in three ways, as either separate words and they're divided by space, hyphenated words divided by a dash or a hyphen, or they can be combined, and that's what we think of when we think of a compound word. We think of a combined word with no space. So in the red box you see examples of compound nouns. Separate with space between them you see life preserver, coffee table, and bird dog. Hyphenated, you see three examples there, a sergeant at arms, or self-rule, or daughter-in-law. That's something we're most familiar with is the in-laws. Well, yeah, that takes hyphens, and that's a compound noun. Or the very bottom box, that's the combined ones. That's what we're most familiar with. And here they have battlefield, dreamland, or porthole. You see there's no space, there's no hyphen, they're just two words that have been put together to create a compound word. Since it's a noun, we list it as a compound noun. And then last but not least, just another review over the difference between common and proper nouns. Again, this is something I know you've known since grade school, but it never hurts to review and to reiterate what you know. So another thing we can do, put them in categories as common or proper nouns. And a common noun names any one of a class of people, places, or things. There's nothing special about them, and even more so, nothing specific. That's what a proper noun is for, right? A proper noun names a specific person, place, or thing. Proper nouns, as we looked at in our capitalization unit, proper nouns are what? Always capitalized. Common nouns, not so much. So you see in the book here, I'm on page 296. You see that there are examples of common nouns, a building, writer, nation, month, leader, place, book, or war. You see there's nothing specific about that. We don't know what building. We don't know what month. We don't know what leader or what book they're referring to. But take a look at the proper noun. First off, you see that every single one of them is capitalized, and they name specific things. Jones, Virginia, the book title, Leaves of Grass. Which war? The Revolutionary War. You see how it's capitalized. What building? The White House. What writer? Specifically be Mark Twain. A nation, a specific nation would be France, capitalized with an F. A specific month, June. So you can see, and you know this, it's just good review to remember to go over it. You see that common nouns are not specific. It can talk about anything, but proper nouns, it is specific. It's talking about one specific thing or person or specific place, and therefore it must be capitalized to show that. So now I'm going to flip over to my chart. And I'm going to show you how your notes should be written down. Now, we're continuing where we left off from yesterday. So you notice at the top that rather than starting with another Roman numeral, we're continuing to talk about nouns, and but we're moving on to a different segment about the same topic. So in my outline, I went and put a number 2. And wrote down that there are 6 different categories of nouns. That's what we just went over. First one we talked about, here's where we put a capital letter A. Notice how I indented. And the first one we talk about is concrete, where it's something that you can feel, touch, see, hear, or smell. And for your benefit, I put some examples of concrete nouns in here. So we have example of concrete nouns, a dog, bus, blanket, hamburger, or shirt. You can see a dog. You can hear a dog. You can feel a dog. Hopefully you don't taste a dog, but you can smell a dog. Same thing with a bus. You can see it, touch it, taste it. So that makes it, taste it. No, you can't taste a bus, but you could smell it, or the people on it. Same thing, a blanket, you can feel it, you can touch it, you can see it. A hamburger, you can taste and see and feel. And a shirt, you can definitely feel and see a shirt. So those are all concrete nouns. Now abstract, this is where you know that it's there, but you can't use your five senses to realize that it is there. So examples of abstract nouns are below: love, sympathy, hope, grief, determination. Those are all qualities or emotions, ideas that you know exist, but you can't prove it using your five senses. So that's why they're abstract nouns. Continuing into our outline format, notice that I have continued an indentation because we're not starting over yet. So letter C is a collective noun. That's where we're talking about a specific group of people or things. And notice under here I put an additional note. So this time I use a small letter A under my number 1. This is the format for an outline. So small letter A, I gave this note because I thought it was important. It looks singular, but its meaning may be singular or plural. It depends on how you use it in a sentence. And that's why I was talking about that murder of crows. So I've given you some examples of collective nouns. It's a special name for a group of something. So you see, again, the class, the choir, a convoy. If you don't know what a convoy is, a convoy of like semi-trucks. If they're grouped together rolling down the road, you call it a convoy. See an army, and then I also mentioned a flock of birds. It's a special name for a group. Okay, letter D would be compound nouns. It says a compound noun. Those are those compound words made up of 2 or more words, and those words grouped together make a new word or make a new unit. And again, I put another note in here. They may be written as separate, hyphenated, or combined words, and I gave examples of all 3 types below. Separate words, the life preserver, coffee table, or bird dog. Hyphenated is daughter-in-law, sergeant-at-arms, or self-rule. And combined, dreamland, butterfly, or battlefield. So those are your 6 categories of nouns.